Hello you guys, it's Crime with Kylie, and today we're going to try something a little bit different. I want to post more for you guys, so we're going to try some Reddit Let's Not Meet stories. This first one is from Nature Loud 2005, and it is called The Neighbor of the Airbnb. Hello everyone, my name is Nina, and this story happened during the last All Saints Day holidays. I admit that it really traumatized me, but maybe talking about it will do me some good. I'm in my final year and this is the last year of high school. Since I worked like a bitch at the beginning of the year and All Saints Day is my birthday, 17 years old, my parents and my family decided to congratulate me by offering me 4 days in another city in France, whose name I will not mention since it's of no importance. I decided to go with my friend Tara, not her real name, and my family had rented an Airbnb in a rather cool and student area. The first 2 days went well, but things got bad on the second night. Tara and I hadn't gone out the day before because we were tired. We arrived early and we spent the day looking for the apartment with our big suitcases, and then we did some shopping and visited. In short, the hassle was over, and as a result, we had a good part of the next day. In the evening, we decided to go to a bar recommended by a friend who was rather nice according to him. We get together and then Tara asked me if I'm up for smoking a cigarette before leaving. I answered yes, but I couldn't find my leaves anymore and I'm too lazy to spend an hour looking for them, so I'm going to scrape some from the neighbor. Plus I found it beautiful, so good luck. I go to knock on his house and there is not a handsome 20-year-old guy who answers, but a slightly older guy like 27 who looks absolutely stoned. I'm surprised, but I say nothing and politely ask if he can help me out with rolling papers. He asks me if I want time to make a sandwich. I say that it doesn't matter because I'm just trying to light up a cigarette. The guy laughs and asks me if I want to come in. I say no and he goes into the apartment to grab a leaf. I wait and quickly look into the apartment on the landing to occupy myself. I admit that a shiver runs down my spine because his apartment is not full of women's underwear, but that of a little girl's. I tell myself that the guy is a dad. I don't know if the kid is in good hands. He gives me the end of his pack of papers, saying that he has plenty. I thank him and leave. I tell Tara laughing and we go to the bar. We come back a little tipsy around 1 a.m. and there, arriving at the door, we became paralyzed. There is music coming from the apartment, and even though we are sure we have turned off the speaker, since I barely drink anything, I am the most quote-unquote responsible and decide to slowly put the key back in the door and lock. The advantage is that the apartment is small and the door opens onto the back of the sofa, which faces a small balcony. I half open the door and my heart freezes. The neighbor from earlier is there, shirtless, in the middle of the room, dancing gently with his eyes closed. The apartment stinks of shit, so we conclude that he is high, except that I see something that makes my blood run cold. The guy had put our underwear on the floor and they are all wrinkled. I don't know what he did with it. I managed to keep my cool, and while I close the door just as gently to lock him in, we go and hide on the stairs with Tara to call the police. We keep an eye on the door and the cops arrive 10 minutes later. They open the door and catch the guy who was quote-unquote eating a sandwich. They take him to the station, we barricade ourselves in the apartment, and Tara and I could not sleep that night. The next day, the cops call us back and explain to us that they are going to release this guy because they can't charge him if there's no complaint. I know it's stupid, but Tara and I were too afraid of our parents' reaction, so we just asked the police to keep him until we left. We had postponed it until the same evening on the pretext that I was sick. They accepted and we went home that same evening, terrified of what we had seen and making up lots of scenarios about what this guy could have done to us. We haven't told anyone about it because we want to forget this story, but I'm telling it here because I tell myself that it's important that you should always keep your cool and not talk to strangers. I should point out that I love to comment on Airbnb with my parents' account advising against it. I told my parents that he was just talking very loudly until very late. I hope that I could have taught some people a lesson to take care of yourself. This second story is from the Balchuchu. It's called When Leaving the Cinema. Hey, I've never written anything on Reddit, but for once I think it's worth posting. A few weeks ago I moved to Paris for my studies. I'm 18, I'm not very social, and I love going to the movies. It may not be very important to you, but it's actually very crucial for me. It's like a refuge where I can reassure myself. It's a safe place. Since living in Paris, I haven't really made any friends. I work a lot and I hate parties, so when I go out, you understand, I go to the cinema. The story happened a few days ago when I was going out to the cinema for the last screening of the day of a little art house film. There were 4 or 5 of us in a large room, so the atmosphere was very calm and silent during the screening. Then the film plays and ends and finally comes to the credits. People leave, but personally I always stay until after the credits roll. Then the ladder is finished and the lights come back on, and when I get up I see that there is only one other person left in the room with me. A man in the last row, dressed in bright red, quite imposing. He looks at me and seems not to start leaving even though the credits have finished. I leave the cinema without paying much attention. You should know that I don't have a Navigo pass, I'm quite precarious, and I don't have the the means to get back. I have to walk around 20 minutes. I then start my walk, and after a few minutes I hear a big noise behind me. I turn around and I see the imposing man about 20 meters away starting to sing aloud to some sort of religious song like a mass. It stops after a few seconds. He then walks towards me. I start to get stressed and I walk quite quickly, but he always stays at a distance, as he just wanted to follow me but without waiting for me. Another weird detail, he rubs against the walls and often moves forward to stick to them. From time to time, I turn around to see if he continues to follow me, and he was always 20 meters away from me. During my entire journey, he is behind me, so much so that when I arrive in the front door of my residence, I turn around and take this video. I put a link to it here. Before closing the door and going to my room without being able to sleep. Story number 3, The Attic, submitted by Shizuki. This story took place in 2022 in my old house. In the house, there were 4 bedrooms on the first floor, a cellar and a living room on the ground floor, a garden, and an attic. One day I was playing with my little sister with some stuffed animals that we had taken out of our cupboards, and after a few minutes of playing, I asked my mother if I could go get some more stuffed animals from the attic, because we had so many that there wasn't enough room in our rooms to store more than 7. She told me yes and warned me that there were also her educational materials in there, high up, and that she didn't want me to damage it. After collecting 5 additional stuffed animals, we started playing again and the afternoon went normally. Everything was going well until 8:30 p.m., the time that my sisters and I had to go to bed at the time. It was shortly after that my father came home to do the evening routine, which was to hug us and say goodnight. As I was about to fall asleep, I heard a loud noise echo through the house. I stood up, looking around my room to see if anything had fallen, but I didn't see anything that could have caused the noise. Suddenly, there was a huge crash followed by the sound of a person running. I then realized that the sounds were coming from the attic. To access it, you have to climb upstairs leading to a 3rd floor with a single door leading to the attic. We had a cat who was 19 years old today who liked to spend her crazy hours in the attic or the cellar, so I reassured myself by thinking that it was she who was making those sounds. So I relaxed and began to close my eyes when suddenly I heard footsteps on the 3rd floor staircase. The heavy footsteps of a man, and not the little steps of Lilu, our cat. I then curled up with a blanket and I called with all of my strength the name of my little sister, who too heard the noises. Her room was right next to the stairs that led to the living room and the cellar, and therefore close to those of the attic. She must have heard the intruder's footsteps because the stairs were made of wood, so when someone went up and down them, the wood creaked and you could clearly hear the footsteps. After a while, the footsteps suddenly stopped and silence invaded the house. I slept very badly since this incident, even though nothing happened, and I had more nightmares in which someone with malicious intentions came down the attic stairs and attacked my sister and me before to kill my parents. After a few weeks of silence, the noises started again, and this time I heard very clearly a person walking with heavy steps on the floor of the attic, turning in circles inside. It often lasted for hours, like the thing or person up there was purposely making noise to scare me. But one night, the sounds of footsteps were followed by furniture moving with a crash and objects being thrown around the room. It was too much, so the next day I went to testify what I heard to my sisters, and then I asked them if they had heard similar things. But they answered me laughing, and I understood that this quickly meant no. My anxiety continued to grow as the days went by, so one day I decided to ignore the noises and try to sleep despite it. And it worked. For 2 hours. After which I said to myself that if I shared my experience with my parents, maybe we would find the origin of the problem. And that is what I did. My father took my testimony much less seriously than my mother, who suggested that I go and explore the attic, to which I had not returned since the first manifestation of the strange sounds. I refused the first time, but my mother then told me that I could stay in front of the door while she checked that the attic was empty. As my mother had told me, I had remained in front of the entrance while she opened the door slowly, letting in a trickle of light which dissipated in a rather worrying manner. A cold wind slipped through my hair, which did not reassure me any further. When my mother finished checking the room for the slightest suspicious thing, she waved at me and said with a big smile, "It's okay, you can come out and play without fear." I started to move forward when I suddenly found myself screaming, "Mom, there's something behind you!" before bursting into tears. I couldn't describe exactly what I saw in the moment, but I knew that it was the male silhouette positioned at the back of the semi-hidden part of the room where the bags were. My mother's reaction was to abruptly get up and scan the place I had described in my panic cry. Sure enough, my father, followed by my sisters, came running to see what was happening, and of course, there was nothing except my mother hugging me. Since that day, I've never been in this attic again, and a few months later, we had to move following a serious incident that I cannot mention for fear of betraying my identity and that of my family. In our new home, we are doing better, and the rare noises I hear are those of the neighbors in the apartment above ours. Alright, you guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode, the first episode of the Let's Not Meet stories. This one was from France. I'm going to do some more United States stories next. Stay tuned and stay spooky.